A fire. A terrible fire. One of the worst people had ever seen. In fact, one newspaper said it was the most terrible tragedy that ever occurred in this village, and it has cast a gloom over the entire community. The fire was on Church Street. Church Street, of course, in the early 1900s, looked considerably different than it does now. Mostly residential. But as you well see, Church Street now is much more commercial, and certainly a lot more cars. It was on Church Street, November 6th, 1925, that this terrible tragedy happened. It was here, in the location of this current-day service station, that the family of George Kemp lived. Mr. Kemp, his wife, and 5 children, all in a probably small house. It was at 12:30 a.m., in the early morning of November 6, 1925, when the fire department was alerted that there was a fire on Church Avenue. The fire department was not far away. It was probably about a mile to the headquarters on Bath Street in the village of Ballston Spa. But this fire was located outside of the village, or what was called the corporation at that time. And negotiating the hills from the village to the scene of the fire was a bit difficult, because even though they don't seem like huge hills, the trucks had to use low gears in order to get up them. That delayed their response time considerably in getting to the fire itself. Once the fire trucks arrived on the scene, they had to get water. The nearest fire hydrant was at the corner of Lewis Street and Church Avenue. That was approximately 1,000 feet from the location of the fire itself. And so it was necessary to not only lay those hoses, but then get the water pumping from the fire hydrants onto the fire itself. But all of these actions were futile. 6 of the members of the Kemp family died in the fire. George and his wife Sarah, Mrs. Kemp's daughters from a previous marriage, and another child from Kemp's earlier marriage. Only 1 child survived. 6 dead. 5 of them found huddled together in one room, as if they were all trying to get out together. And there is some speculation that the father had tried to move a chiffonier, a tall dresser with a mirror on top, away from a window to facilitate the family's escape. But they may have been overcome in the process of doing that, and all died in the house. Wendell Townley, the deputy sheriff at the time, and also the village fire chief, and seated here at the front row on the far left. He spoke 32 years later about this tragic fire and talked about what may have caused it. There's some speculation it was a wood stove. Other speculation was about a chimney which had been recently repaired for some reason. Townley also talked about the fact that there were kerosene stoves in the house. They may have consumed large amounts of oxygen, and someone who was oxygen-starved may have fallen and tripped over one of the stoves, setting everything on fire. Or it may have just been an accumulation of gases in the home, and when a draft of air entered the home, it caused an explosion. But it was a sorry sight, a few days later, with all the hearses lined up in front of the funeral parlor, all awaiting the bodies to to be taken to various cemeteries in and around the area. During that afternoon, the village of Ballston Spa closed everything up, including all the businesses, for an hour as a sign of respect to the family that had lost their lives. Reaction to this fire was swift and sudden. Within a day, newspapers in California had reported this fire. And a more local paper, the Saratogian, in a rather opinion-laced article the day after the fire, had stated, "Ballston Spa has been put to shame by visitors and residents of neighboring communities who have far better equipment with their inadequate firefighting equipment." Well, it didn't take the people of Ballston Spa long to try to take action to change this. They needed a pumper so that they wouldn't have to worry about where water was going to come from. Over the next couple of years, there was intense action in Ballston Spa about trying to improve the firefighting equipment and the time that it took for firemen to get to fires. But twice, in a matter of a couple of years, the voters defeated any plans to increase and make things better for firefighting equipment. But it was the Eagle Fire Department, one of 3 fire departments in the village, that really got things going. They established a subscription plan by which people could buy into a new fire truck. And in the end, they raised enough money, were able to purchase a new truck so that Ballston Spa would be far more protected than it had been. So, what of all of this? What impact does that have on our life today? Well, first of all, there's a lot more equipment being bought for fire departments, necessary in today's world. Back in 1925, a new pumper truck was going to cost about $20,000, maybe a little bit less. Today, pumper trucks and other fire equipment cost in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. But most communities, just as Ballston Spa finally came to the conclusion of, they want this equipment to protect their citizens. Secondly, we've done a lot more in terms of laws and regulations to prevent fires from this ever happening again. There are regulations on stoves so that hopefully a fire like this couldn't happen again. There are also strong suggestions about the fact that it is necessary to keep things away from possible exits. Just like Mr. Kemp tried to get the chiffonier away from the window in order to get his family out of the house. And even more than that, there's a great emphasis on how fire trucks get to scenes of fires. In a later fire in 1931, the fire trucks were inhibited from getting to a fire not far from where George Kemp's house fire was because a train got in the way. Well, hopefully we figured out now how to get around those kinds of things in most cases so that firemen can get to where they need to as quickly as possible. All in all, we've made some significant improvements, and because of that, hopefully people everywhere are safer than they've been before. If you look at this entire story, you realize the significance of 2 of the 3 major Ballston Spa fire departments. The Union Fire Department, which did everything it could to save the Kemp family, and which is now still in existence on Milton Avenue in Ballston Spa, and the Eagle Matt Lee Fire Department, a combination of the Eagle and Matt Lee Fire Departments, which set up the procedures by which new equipment could be purchased. Hopefully, by the actions of these fire departments and others, we will make Ballston Spa a considerably more safe place to live for the future.